Well, the Greens MP Adam Bandt was at the table all weekend as a member of the multi-party climate committee aimed at getting an agreement on a price on carbon. No easy task. Adam Bandt is in our Parliament House studios. Adam Bandt, welcome to breakfast.
Morning, Fran.
The Business Council of Australia and the AI Group have proposed a $10 starting price for carbon. Is this acceptable to the Greens?
Well, we've always said a $10 starting price or something of that order would be far too low, but I think it is significant that they've entered the debate at the moment. It shows that the opposition's plan is now almost without support, even within its own constituency, and whilst we might have a disagreement with the Business Council about the price and about level of compensation, the fact that they're endorsing the fundamental structure of what the Greens and Labor have said we want as a way forward is, I think, significant.
Or could you see it as them putting forward a model that was not going to be acceptable to the Greens and the government, therefore, in a sense, blocking agreement on this?
Well, I think I'm not surprised that they will come out and advocate for what would effectively be no action on climate change and wouldn't encourage the transition by coming out with a low price and wanting full compensation. But the fact that they agree with the structure is, I think, significant, because one of the things that the Greens have always said is that we need to come up with a scheme that does not put a ceiling on ambition, that allows Australia to move as the rest of the world starts to move and as more and more of the science comes in and as the realisation of how quickly we need to move to a decarbonised economy sinks in. We want a scheme that is able to move with that.
Okay, and I'll come to that in a moment, but can you just give us a sense of whether the $10 price put up by the BCA and AI Group was discussed by the multi-party committee?
Well, I'm not going to go into whether we discuss specific prices or not. Obviously, everyone was aware that the report had been released. But look, we've had a number of submissions from people for some time now. The BCA are coming to this debate fairly late in the piece, but perhaps that's a realisation of that they don't think the opposition strategy is working. I don't know, you'd have to ask them, but probably better late than never.
Well, I would say that they've always supported the notion of a market-based mechanism, and in a sense this is a revising down of their position. But is the key here to get business and the Australian community to agree to life with a price on carbon at a low level? Rather, is that more important than the actual figure at what it starts?
Well, I don't know about more or less important, but I think that they all the elements of the package are important. And I know there's been a lot of focus on the price and how quickly or not it might increase in accordance with global ambition. But there's other things that are important as well, discussing the level of ambition of Australia, discussing the current strength of the economy, recognising, of course, that there's difficulties for different sectors, but recognising that the government is saying we are going to be in a relatively good position over the next couple of decades because of the terms of trade, and that probably means Australia is able to shoulder a burden and perhaps move a bit quicker than we thought we might have before.
So is that what the Greens are pushing for here? When you say Christine Milne talked about it's important to not put a ceiling on ambition, the Greens don't want to lock off on an agreement that has a fixed target. The original CPRS had a fixed target of 5%, 25% if the world came along the road. Is the key here for the Greens to try and get an agreement that allows a flexible target to keep that discussion open until we shift to an ETS?
Well, you're right that one of the reasons that we didn't support the CPRS was that we felt it locked in failure, and the legislation was quite clear in that respect and would have put limits on Australia's contribution to the fight against global warming. And if you look at the UK, for example, recently they've just decided to move to a 50% greenhouse pollution reduction by 2027, and that's a really significant change in view and change in thinking. And we want to make sure that Australia is open to have a debate about what's the appropriate contribution for it.
I want to move on to the debate about asylum seekers, Adam Bandt, but just first we heard we heard Tony Windsor in AM. Basically, the jury's still out for him. What's your sense that that Tony Windsor does want a price on carbon?
Well, I guess one of the things that, I think about this a bit like the Venn diagrams that you looked at in primary school, and we've got to find that area of overlap that's between the Labor between Labor, the Greens, and each of the two independents. And each of us have got different concerns and different things that will be motivating us in our decision. But I think we all do believe, without putting words in other people's mouths, that there is potentially an area of overlap. But it's a question of whether we can find it or not. And I think that's part of the reason that these negotiations will take a while and will be tough.
It's 12 minutes to 8 on Radio National Breakfast. Our guest is Greens MP Adam Bandt. Adam Bandt, another difficult issue for the Gillard government is asylum seekers. And today in the lower house, you're going to be introducing a motion condemning the government for the proposed refugee swap with Malaysia. This motion's already passed the Senate. Will it pass the House? Have you counted the numbers?
No, look, I haven't, but I understand that Andrew Wilkie will support it. I think the coalition has said that they will, but we'll know when it comes to a vote. I mean, it's not something that we do lightly. I mean, condemning is a strong word, but fundamentally, but if it passes, then it'll be the first time in this parliament that both houses of parliament have condemned the government for doing something. And I guess I've got fundamentally a couple of concerns. One is that we are sending people to a country that is not a signatory to the conventions that we've signed up to that ensure basic minimum treatments. And my view is, why do we sign up to these conventions about protecting the rights of people if we then seek to contract it out and send our obligations offshore? And secondly, it seems very much policy on the run, and I think that we as a country are going to be diminished if we continue making our decisions about how we treat some of the world's most vulnerable people in a knee-jerk and responsive way. I think we need to step back and take a look at whether mandatory detention is appropriate, whether we've got the settings right, and that's why I'll be introducing that motion. That it's in the same terms as the motions that the Greens introduced and was passed through the Senate.
And yet the UNHCR gave a cautious tick to this agreement with Malaysia. Not that we have the final agreement yet, in a sense, because they see it, I think, as a part of a start of a regional model, because Australia would take under this agreement 4,000 people who have been declared refugees who are sort of sitting stuck there in Malaysia. Do you accept that that's an improvement in the way things could be organised in the future?
Well, look, if we had a regional model that was based on the protection of people and ensuring that some of these people who are fleeing some of the worst situations in the world were looked after, then that would be one thing to look at. But that's not what we've got. We've got a regional model that's based on domestic perceived political imperatives and that is really low on looking after the rights of people. And I mean, if the situation in Malaysia is so bad, why are we sending 800 people there?
Adam Bandt, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Fran.
Adam Bandt is a Greens MP in the lower house. It's 10 minutes to 8 on Breakfast.